LV here. I hope everyone had a nice long holiday weekend. Today I have a tips video for you. I will be going over 5 tips, thoughts that I think will hopefully help people when submitting grading cards, or just thoughts that will help people traverse the world of sports cards. Also, I want to quickly note that unfortunately my kids' school, where both my kids go to, it's looking like the teachers are going to go on strike. So I will have both my kids full-time at home, and I might not be able to upload and create as much content for a little bit for the time being, because I want to make sure I'm there for them, teach them things, make sure they don't lose any ground not being in school. All right, let's just go ahead and get into these 5 tips. Hopefully you'll find them helpful. All right, first tip. When prepping, scrutinizing your cards for grading under a nice lamp, try pretending they aren't your cards and pretend you're a grader working for PSA. It should take about 2 minutes to grade each card. Go front of the card first, centering first, then corners, then surface, then edges, then flip over the card and spend the same amount of time going over those same 4 aspects, and then give your honest, unbiased grade. For some reason, disassociating yourself with your card in this way helps you be more truthful of the card's condition. And also really think about what each different grading company would grade the card, because the companies do grade a little differently, and it might help determine which grading company you might want to use for that specific card. So I think the overall thinking of this really helps, because we tend to be, or at least I do, I tend to be a little more lax, more lenient on flaws I see in my own card, and I may push them through to get graded. But when I view them through a different lens, like they aren't my cards and I really need to scrutinize them and make sure they're gradable, it just works out a little better. All right, this tip also is a good segue to my next one. All right, next tip. So a lot of people probably don't remember or know, but for a while I was offering a pre-screening grading service. It was kind of a trial run because I wasn't quite sure I had enough time to do it or that I would enjoy it. So I never promoted it beyond one video on YouTube, and I only got under 10 customers total, but they were loyal, awesome repeat customers who loved the service, especially my unique aspect of the service, which I thought was the coolest part. I filmed myself grading their cards, each card, and then I sent them the link of the video after the payment was made, and they really enjoyed it. And I probably graded around 600 cards total, and I would say the service went really smoothly. Yeah, I still terminated the service because it never gained traction, and really I'm not sure I ever let it gain traction. So I like to call it a successful failure. I'm still really happy I offered the service. It kind of let me see what it was like to be an actual grader, you know, kind of walk in a PSA grader's shoes for a day, if you will. So I learned some important stuff that I think could help people when submitting their orders. I learned that as a grader, I got really bored when I had to grade larger orders. Made me really not want to work, and I'm really passionate about sports cards and grading. I think it's human nature to want to check off a project and move on to the next one quickly, and larger orders are kind of daunting, and leaves graders possibly bored and angry the order is taking so long, that it's taking long for them to check off. They want to move on to that next order. So my advice, submit kind of smaller orders. Second, I really liked variety when people submitted variety. It kept me entertained and focused. I didn't like when I got 10 to 15 of the exact same card or from the exact same set in that same order. It made me a little more agitated as a grader and wanting to kind of rush through grading each card, which can lead to inconsistent grades. So my advice, go ahead and send variety if you can. Break up large multiples of the same card into different orders. Next, I love to see unique cards. Kept me really focused. You know, I'm talking about cards people don't commonly submit, you know, not that base rookie prisms that you see over and over again. Grading those would just kind of put me in a bad mood. grading the rest of the order, and I just didn't care as much. All right, hopefully that was possibly helpful, kind of getting into a grader's head and how they possibly think, so we can submit maybe a less boring, less infuriating order for a grader, and that could mean for better grades, hopefully. All right, let's move on to the next tip. All right, this next tip is about forecasting the future. I probably mentioned this in the past, but I think it's important. I think everyone should truly sit down sometimes and think about which current types of cards are going to be popular, sought after, rare enough where demand is greater than supply. Think about how nostalgia and how the passage of time will create certain sets to be valuable. Here's an example. I'm seeing all these young people buying and selling those kabooms and downtowns, those case hits that everyone loves. That generation just loves them for some reason. I watch a lot of YouTube channels, and the younger folk seem to be they're just flipping them constantly, and their dealer cases are just filled with them. I actually, personally, I think they're really ugly, and I think they're just too expensive. So I've never gotten into them. In fact, I actually don't even own one of them right now. So this is not pumping and dumping at all. But my investor mind is telling me maybe I should look into buying some. Because think about it, they could become the rare and now really valuable 1990s inserts that us oldies all love and seem to be very fond of today. It's all about nostalgia. We loved those 90 inserts, but we couldn't afford them back in the day. And we couldn't really buy them until probably 15, 20 years later when we actually had a job and disposable income to spend. Proof is in the COVID boom, the pandemic. A lot of people our age came back into the hobby and bought the cards they couldn't when they were younger. They just couldn't afford it, which drove up demand and prices. So I'm thinking in 15, 20 years from now, when these kaboom and downtown loving kids actually have their own money, they will be looking to buy what was really popular when their generation was collecting cards. And that is these case hits that everyone loves. All these young people seem to love. So just kind of something to think about or keep an eye on. All right, this next tip is kind of a tricky one and could be taken the wrong way, so I'll make sure to clarify where it's important. It's about taking note of what smart people in the hobby are collecting and buying. We all need to accept that there is always someone smarter out there in the world than us. And I always make note of the people I think are smarter than me, and I make note of what they are buying. But smart people in the hobby is a pretty subjective thing, and I don't want you to be influenced by the wrong people. Actually, it's important to note if influencers on YouTube you're watching are directly telling you to buy something, it's good to be skeptical and don't always trust them, because they might be more out for themselves and are doing the old pumping and dumping trick. So you got to watch out who influences you and be careful on who you think is truly smart, is what I'm saying. Be sure. But for me, an example of someone in the hobby that I feel is smarter than me is Nat Turner. That dude is just like a savant, let's face it. And I like his approach to collecting. I mean, who wouldn't when you have millions of dollars? But that's not the point. What is great is that you are actually able to literally see the sets he collects on the PSA set registry. Or you listen to interviews where you can gather information on what types of cards he's buying. He does a lot of interviews, and they're very important to listen to. I think it gives me comfort seeing that he is collecting all the 2003 Topps Chrome basketball refractor sets that I have been building and collecting for years now, or that he is comfortable collecting in large amounts of LeBron James cards like me. I know his value scale of what he buys is just way more astronomical, more than me, but that's okay. Or I like seeing what fellow YouTube grading revealers whom I respect are sending in to be graded. I watch what type of cards they submit, what players, and which slabs they're actually profiting on. All that stuff's important. You can really learn a lot from it. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, final tip has pretty deep roots and is something I constantly need to remind myself to do. And it all goes back to not forcing cards for grading. We aren't stupid. We know the flaws we see on our cards. We see that little flaw that will keep us from getting that Gem 10 grade. But what do? We try and grade it anyway. Or we keep the card for grading down the road. We let it sit in a box for a long time and probably never actually grade it, when all the while we could have sold that slightly flawed card raw a long time ago and used the money to buy other cards that truly had shots at grading Gem 10s. So I'm going to do this probably in the next few weeks. I'm going to go through all my gradable boxes and pull out the ones that aren't actually worth grading and either sell them through an eBay consigner like DC Sports, or I'll go ahead and ship them off to ComC and sell them on there. Because let's face it, grading fees are still really pretty high, and PSA is currently taking forever to grade cards. It feels like it's back up to about 60-65 days when it was amazing when it was around 30 days. So my point is that sometimes selling raw is okay and often smarter because it creates that liquidity to buy other cards that have a better shot at actually grading. Okay, I hope everyone found these tips helpful, if not entertaining. Hopefully I'll have time, like I mentioned about the kids' school strike. So I don't know. I love making content, but we will see. I always have my priorities in order, and I always put family first, and I recommend everyone doing that. So I'll probably spend a little more time with my kiddos, but all in the back of my mind, I will be thinking of content to make for the future. And as always, I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great day.